Good day and welcome to the latest edition of the Stargate Universe Sci-Fi Cult Classics documentary. I'm joined by the one and only Jewel Staite, who played the role of Dr. Keller in Stargate Atlantis. I suppose, Jewel, it's roughly a decade on now or more since you appeared on our screens in terms of Stargate Atlantis, in terms of the original shooting. Does it almost feel like yesterday that you were back on set?
Well, I mean, I guess it does and it doesn't. I think when you have an experience like that, it stays with you for a long time. And reliving the stories and the experiences over the years at conventions has prolonged the memory quite a bit. But sometimes it does feel like ages ago, especially when you hear, the word decade. It makes you kind of go, whoa, what happened? But yeah, I have many, many fond memories of it. So it's always nice to relive.
And I suppose, Jewel, in terms of Stargate SG-1, that was a massive phenomenon based off the movie, which wasn't really a great success, the movie, but SG-1 set the way, and obviously Stargate Atlantis was a spin-off show of SG-1, and I know there was an awful lot of interlapping figures. Numerous SG-1 characters had cameo roles in Stargate Atlantis. Did you actually try out for previous roles in Stargate SG-1 or Stargate Atlantis before you were cast in the original role?
I did. I know I tried out for something. I auditioned for something in SG-1, a soldier type person, and Peter DeLuise was directing that episode. I've worked with Peter many times on a show a long time ago called Higher Ground. So I remember that audition because Peter was in the room. But I never made it onto SG-1. I don't think I read for it very many times. And then Atlantis, the first time I read for it was for the Wraith girl, Elia, which I booked, obviously. Yeah.
And I suppose, Jewel, you mentioned Stargate Atlantis, and obviously you were probably aware of the big sci-fi phenomenon, which was Stargate SG-1. So getting onto getting the gig in terms of Stargate Atlantis, obviously it opens up opportunities being involved in that, what is a big sort of phenomenon as such in terms of a global sort of audience. So in terms of landing that Dr. Keller character where you're front and screen and you're playing a pivotal sort of role portrayed in Stargate SG-1, which has been shown all over the world. I suppose the Wraith girl must have been, I suppose, in a sense, it's great to get that sort of booking, but the Dr. Keller, obviously, character must have made you sort of jumping out of your skin, as the saying goes.
Yeah, that really came out of the blue. I had done my guest star spot as Elia, and the producers had asked me if I would ever be interested in coming back as Elia. And I said, I don't know, because the prosthetic work was so insane. I think I was 3.5 hours in prosthetics every day and then another hour at the end of the day. And it was very uncomfortable. So I said, I love the show. Hopefully I can come back and play something else since, no one will recognize me. And then, I don't know, I guess it was a year later, maybe less, I got a phone call completely out of the blue, offering me a very large contract to come on the show and play their new doctor. So it came as quite a shock, yes. And I'd been wanting a job that was at home. I'm from Vancouver. And the show was shooting in Vancouver, and I was just so thrilled to finally get a job at home that I was just really quite elated.
And I suppose, Jewel, that opportunity arose for you when Paul McGillian, who was playing Carson Beckett, obviously he was involved, he wanted to spread his wings in terms of other sort of projects before coming back. So in terms of that, did you feel obviously that he was such a pivotal character, that he was forlong and center in every sort of episode? You must think to yourself, right, I'm coming in to start to take over where he sort of left off. And I suppose in terms of that, you must be a sort of daunting experience once and center, because people will be comparing your character to his character, but also for you must be a joyful, given the importance of his character. You must realize that coming in to fulfill that sort of role, that you would be there for a good while.
Yeah, I was thrilled that the job would be lengthy. But I was very nervous because I knew that being the new doctor had a lot of things coming with it because Paul's character was so well loved on the show. A lot of people don't know, Paul is one of my closest friends. I consider him a brother. And
Yeah.
he and I were very close back then as well. So that was difficult because I cared very much about our friendship, and didn't want it to be tarnished in any way because of taking the job. Luckily, it wasn't. Actors understand that, you know, when you get a big gig, you kind of have to say yes. So he totally got that. And of course, he was fortunately able to come back on the show and reprise the role of Beckett. And we got to work together, which was really fun. So yeah, I was a little nervous. And then when I showed up for work on my first day as Keller, there was actually a picket line outside the film studio with lots of Beckett fans wanting his character to stay on the show. So that was awkward. And I felt nervous and hesitant for a while, a good long while. I didn't really realize the backlash I would receive, which I did receive. I know there was lots of stuff said online, a lot of, people not really behind Dr. Keller, but I like to think that I changed some minds. And what I loved the most about her was she was also really doubtful of herself. She was very insecure. She was a fish out of water. She felt very much out of her element a lot of the time in the world of Atlantis and really had to struggle to prove herself, not just to everyone else, but to herself, and gain her confidence as she went along her journey. And she did that, I think, in the end, and created some really lasting, meaningful relationships on the show, as did I. Luckily, that cast is some of the warmest, most lovely people out there, and they were so welcoming to me and so great right off the bat and teased me relentlessly, which is their way of saying I love you. It ended up being just a complete dream job, really. It's hard when you have a great job like that because you can't help but compare every other job to that job. It's tough, there's lots of times where I've been on shows where I'm like, this is so great, but it's not Atlantis great. It was awesome.
And I suppose, Jewel, you mentioned being based in Vancouver. You're very familiar in terms of all the sets and the shooting and location of the studios that they have there in terms of their production. But were you still taken back the first day you arrived on set, me for cast as Ella, in terms of on terms of the big scale of production that was Stargate, in terms of its sets and every sort of detail they sort of put into every sort of ounce of equipment, every stage prop to make it as realistic as possible. Even the sort of Stargate itself, did it sort of take you back by surprise when you saw it up close?
Yeah, I think it takes anybody back by surprise. It's a pretty spectacular looking set when you first lay eyes on it. When I was doing the role as Elia, I didn't really get to see much of the actual Atlantis ship set, and it's really something to behold for sure. Yeah, I just, it was such a well-oiled machine. That was what was the most impressive part of all. The sets were basically lit already, meaning you would show up to work every day and they would flick a switch and the lights would come on and they would essentially be ready to shoot right away. So it was very fast moving, and just felt like a well-oiled machine from top to bottom. Every crew member knew each other, knew their job. It was like almost like a mind reading thing going on when they were setting up certain scenes. So I just couldn't believe at the pace everyone was working, which also made it really enjoyable for me because the hours were really wonderful. Often on television, you're working sometimes 15, 16, 17 hours a day. That's quite normal. And Stargate days weren't like that. They were 10, maybe 12-hour days, maybe. But for the most part, it was a total dream for an actor, for sure.
I suppose when you're on a show that is running a roughly 3-4 seasons into it, I suppose everything is almost like clockwork. So even shooting scenes, I've imagined there's never a fourth or fifth take. Sometimes most of the shooting and action scenes, I imagine they probably can do them in 1-2 takes max.
Oh yeah, it definitely didn't take very long. I don't think we ever went past 4 or 5 takes ever, unless something was super complicated or something was going wrong with a location that we were at. But no, for the most part, it was a very, very well-trained stunt team. Anyone who was rigging weapons and things like that, they'd been doing it for so long that it just felt very, very easy. Yeah.
And your character, Dr. Keller herself, she always almost like a little vixen on the show in terms of her love, in terms of getting to know the primary members of Stargate.
Yeah.
And what was that sort of like? I imagine an awful lot of fun and laughs every once the camera stopped shooting.
Oh, definitely. I didn't know that was going to happen. I obviously, you know, as an actor, you don't know what the writers are going to come up with for you. So every week we would get a new script and it was always a revelation, you know, what's going to happen. David Hewlett and I have a natural chemistry, and we did from the moment we met. We have the same sense of humor. It instantly clicked, basically. So I don't know if the Ronan Keller storyline was already being written and fleshed out before they realized that David and I had such natural chemistry. So it did sort of turn into a love triangle, but I adore Jason, obviously, very much. He's a super fun guy and lovely and just silly and crazy. And we actually shared a dressing room the whole time we shot Atlantis. It's basically a big bus, and then there's a very thin wall separating each dressing room in the middle. So I was on one end and he was on the other. So, you know, he'd know if I was napping and would start playing his guitar when he knew that I was trying to sleep, just stuff like that. You know, it's basically like a brother, silly, crazy brother. But yeah, you know, in terms of a love triangle, I will say, and I get this question a lot, you know, there's a lot of people at conventions who say during the Q&A or during the panel, why did Keller choose McKay? Why wouldn't she choose Rodney or Ronan? That's so crazy to me. And I always say, because of the intellectual connection between Keller and Rodney. They are very similar in that respect. And she's the type of person that's attracted to someone's intellect first. So I think she found that kinship in Rodney. They both probably grew up in similar environments where they were super smart and kind of felt a little out of their element, socially unacceptable, that kind of thing, socially awkward. They found that in each other. And I think they also had a great yin and yang where she was able to bring Rodney down when he was doing his, you know, regular Rodney freakout moment. She was great at bringing him back to earth. So they were actually a really great match. And I'm so glad that they ended up together. Made me happy to see.
And I suppose, Jewel, last question from me now before I let you go. In terms of probably the most difficult question I'll ask you, let's pretend there was a Stargate universe sort of encyclopedia, a dictionary, and they put your character, Dr. Keller, in it, and they left two blank sentences underneath it. And they asked you, Jewel Staite, having played the role of Dr. Keller, to write those two sentences to describe her. What would you like those two sentences to read?
The unexpected, reluctant hero is definitely one of them. Gosh, what else would I say? More to her than the eye can see.
More to her than the eye.
Yes, she's very easily underestimated. And I felt like she had a lot of fight in her. And as the show was nearing its end, its unfortunate, untimely end, in my opinion, we were starting to see her confidence grow and her courage grow. And I loved when she took that wraith on and I got to do that tiny little fight scene. And I would have loved to have seen more of that from her. And I think we would have seen some new sides to Keller if the show had gone on.
On that note, Jewel Staite, a pleasure talking to you this evening.
You too.
You're playing Dr. Keller in Stargate Atlantis, and also you wrote a role as Ella, one of the wraiths, earlier on in the season. Jewel, in these troublesome times, stay safe, and no doubt if you're 2021 with all these reproductions of new movies, it's been 25 years now since the original Stargate movie. No doubt a new movie is in the works, and we might see, who knows, maybe a cameo role or a guest appearance of Dr. Keller in the 21st century in a Stargate blockbuster.
You never know. You never know.
Jewel, pleasure, and take care.
Thank you. You too.